Here it is. All right. So I just told you, let's say year 30, if you're investing in crypto and it grew only 15%, again, I think it's going to go higher, but let's say 15% for the next 40 years on average, you are at, on year 33, you're at $3.987 million. You've borrowed 210,000, but you've, in those 2 years of borrowing, have gained $987,000 of borrowing 120. But this is the beauty. Every time you borrow, the compound will outgrow the borrow. Unless you say, you know what? Next year, I know the compound is going to be 4.5 million. So this year, I'm just going to live off $1 million. I'm going to borrow $1 million. I don't care. I'm about to die anyway, right? If that's how you feel, right? You're still going to compound even though you borrowed $1 million. And what I'm telling you in crypto, this is possible without asking anyone. You could borrow $1 million off yourself in a minute. Nobody's going to ask you any questions. That, because it's all software. There's a saying that says software is going to eat the world. So do you not believe that money software is not going to do well? Crypto is money software. So, okay, we went to 4.5 million on year 34. Year 35, we get to $5.2 million. But remember, we just took out $1 million to live an amazing year. You still gained the next year. If it just gains 15% again, you gain another like $600,000. Right? Yeah, you borrowed $1 million, but it gained $6 million. So this is the power of compound interest and borrowing instead of spending and then keeping the rest inside of your portfolio. So then the numbers just start to get really crazy. In year 36, it gets to $6 million so right there, it gained 800,000. Year after that goes to 7 million. So 1 year, 6 to 7, right? You gain $1 million of compounding interest from 1 year to the next. Of course, you got to have $6 million in there to compound to 7 in 1 year off of $15 million, 15% gain. Now we go, next year goes to 8 million. You saw that 1 million back to back to back. Next year goes to 9.2. Next year goes to 10.6. So again, we're making a bunch of assumptions here. The first assumption is crypto gains on average 15% a year for 40 years. So you may be thinking, yeah, I don't see it happening for 15 years. Do you know how many years it took stock market to get to 8 to 12%? Over 100. Talking about 40 years, not 100 years. So yes, let's say it just matches the stock market, which again, I'm going to explain why I don't think that's going to be the case. But let's say it just matches the stock market. That means in 40 years, it's not going to be at 12%, 8 to 12%. That means it should be higher, right? If we just match. But here's why I don't believe it's going to match. The stock market was limited to certain people for a lot of that 100 years. Rich white men in America, right? Because the stock market was based on people who had money, who could have a broker, and had American access to buying on the stock market. That was a limited amount of people. Now the crypto world opens up investing to the entire planet, no matter how much money you make anywhere in the world. Do you not think that's going to grow more than a market that was only limited to one race, one gender in one country? I cannot see how that's going to happen. But again, when you invest, you're betting on things happening more in the future. So for me, I look at crypto and I say, can't see how more people don't do this in the future, especially when they understand what I'm talking about. Right? And again, it takes some education for sure. And that's why I do these videos and these podcasts, and I teach at retirebills.com, because there are parts to this that have been kept away from people like us. Till we got things like Google and YouTube and now ChatGPT. Now it's just on us to search everything I'm saying, double check it. I've checked it hundreds of times. I've talked about it many times. People have come back at me with questions. I send them. That's why I'm on investor.gov. I have my own calculator, but I went to investor.gov because you can't question that one, right? It's basically backed by the government. It's math too. You could double check all this math. So when you look at crypto's availability on the world scale to everyone, and anyone with even just a cell phone could buy it, I believe more people are gonna buy it. And I believe it's gonna grow faster than 15% a year on average for the next 40 years. So even if it just grows 15% over the next 40 years, you still got $10 million if you could invest $500. Here's where not everybody can invest $500 a month. And that's where, again, retire your bills comes in. You can invest $500 a month. If you are spending $1,000 on bills, you can easily invest $500 a month into crypto with the same money. And again, I've talked about it for many, many months at this point, almost years at this point. You can invest the same money you use to pay your bills. I know it sounds unbelievable. I have many people doing it. Retireyourbills.com. I won't make this a pitch too much, but it's possible. I have many people doing it. So if you can invest that $500 a month into crypto, in 40 years, you will be able to retire. Depending, so now let's say, how old are you? Oh, I don't have 40 years. I don't want to retire in 40 years. I just told you, after year 30, you at $3 million. At year 28, you're at $2 million. And it's still compounding. So you can get to a point where you say, you know what, I'm at $1 million. I know it's going to keep compounding. There's some people doing this. It's called FIRE, like financially independent. I forgot the RE stand for, but it's basically they lower their expenses so they can retire early, right? So let's say you get to $1 million and you want to borrow, let's say 30,000 to live off of. You just got to go to a country where you can live for 30,000. That's where there's countries like Dominican Republic, Colombia. There's a bunch of countries, Vietnam. There's a bunch of countries around the world where you could live pretty nice for $30,000. That's a life decision, but it's possible, right? So now you're looking at year 24, you can retire. So now in 24 years, if it just averages 15%, which again, I really do not think that's what's going to happen. I actually believe it's probably going to be 20% on average for the next 40 years. So I'm going to just, for fun, show you what those numbers look like if that happens. All right, so I'm also going to change to a different format of this video because when I try to share this stuff, it becomes, oh no, yeah, I'll do it like this. All right, so now let's see what happens if it goes to 20%, which is what I am believing it's going to be, but I don't know for sure. Nobody can. Watch what happens to these numbers. It sounds super unbelievable. I get it. But trying to make this better. We're ready for $1 million if that same $500 a month gains 20% a year for the next 40 years. Let's say you don't live for 40 years. Let's see what happens in year. Let's see what happens in year. All right, how many years before we get to 1 million? If it grows only 20% a year, 19 years. So 19 years, I know people are like, man, but that doesn't feel good. I still got to work for 20 years in a job I hate or whatever it is. Versus what else? What is your other option? Stock is 8 to 12%. Real estate is 3%. Gold is 3%. What is your other option? Tell me. I really would like to know. Of course, you can create your own business. There's risk there, but yes, that's the type of thing that could make you more money faster. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's built to do that. So I'm not even talking about that as an option here. So again, year 23, you're at $2 million. Then we get to year 30, you're at $7 million a year 30. So again, if you're in your 20s, 30 more years, you're in your 50s. Imagine having $7 million in your 50s. You definitely can retire. If you're in your 30s, in your 60s, you will have $7 million. Not bad. And like I told you, you can borrow off of it and it's still going to compound. If you're in your 40s, in 30 years, you're 70, which is what they're going to change the retirement age anyway, right? You're in your 70s with $7 million. That's nice. If you're in your 50s, yes, you're going to be in your 80s. But again, I told you, I know people that they can't borrow off of their assets in their 80s because they have it in assets. They have to ask permission and they're just not getting the permission. So again, this is why I don't really see a way around it. Like if you want to retire, you need to invest in crypto. I don't really see how you get around it. I don't. So again, let's just keep having fun over here. Year 31, you have $8 million, and this is where the compound starts to really get crazy. From year 33 to year 35, 34 to 35, you go from 14 to $17 million, $3 million just on compounding. And it gets even better every year. Next year, you go from 17 to 21, 21 to 24. That's what compound interest does, especially if you don't have to touch the principal, which is what crypto allows you to do.